The Siege of Osowiec. They called it the Fortress of Death. A massive structure of stone and steel, surrounded by a moat and a forest of barbed wire. It was the last bastion of the Russian Empire in Poland, and the Germans wanted it badly. For months, they had tried to take it by force, by siege, by bombardment. They had unleashed thousands of shells, hundreds of tons of explosives, dozens of flamethrowers. They had sacrificed thousands of lives, but the fortress still stood. The Russians inside were outnumbered, outgunned, and starving. They had no reinforcements, no supplies, no hope. They knew they were doomed, but they refused to surrender. They fought with a desperate courage, inspired by their commander, Lieutenant Vladimir Kotlinsky. He was a young officer, barely 25 years old, but he had a reputation for bravery and cunning. He had organized the defense of the fortress, using every trick and tactic he could think of. He had mined the bridges, dug tunnels, set traps. He had led daring raids and counterattacks, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy. He had rallied his men with fiery speeches and patriotic songs. He had become a legend among his comrades and a nightmare for his foes. But even he knew that their resistance was futile. The Germans had brought in their latest weapon, poison gas. They had used it before, with devastating results on the Western Front. Now they were going to use it on the Eastern Front, on Osowiec Fortress. On August 6, 1915, they unleashed their hellish attack. They fired over 30 gas batteries at the fortress, releasing a deadly cloud of chlorine and bromine. The gas was heavier than air, so it sank into the trenches and bunkers where the Russians were hiding. It burned their eyes, their skin, their lungs. It turned their blood into acid, their flesh into jelly. The Germans waited for the gas to do its work. They expected to hear screams of agony, cries of surrender, or silence of death. Instead, they heard something else, a roar of defiance. The Russians were not dead. They were dying, but they were not dead yet. And they were not going to die without a fight. They wrapped their faces with rags soaked in urine or water to neutralize the gas. They grabbed their rifles, their bayonets, their grenades. They charged out of their positions, straight at the German lines. The Germans could not believe their eyes. They saw hundreds of figures emerge from the gas cloud, covered in blood and gore. They looked like zombies, like walking corpses. They coughed up chunks of their own lungs as they ran towards them. They fired at them with blind fury, but nothing seemed to stop them. They were the dead men of Osowiec Fortress. They reached the German trenches and engaged them in hand-to-hand combat. They stabbed them with bayonets, smashed them with rifle butts, strangled them with bare hands. They fought with a strength and a rage that was beyond human. They broke through the first line of defense and advanced to the second line. The Germans panicked and fled in terror. They ran so fast that they got tangled in their own barbed wire traps. The Russians pursued them relentlessly, firing at them as they ran. Lieutenant Kotlinsky was among them. He had been hit by the gas and wounded by shrapnel, but he did not care. He only cared about one thing: revenge. He saw a German officer trying to escape from his grasp. He recognized him as General Rudolf von Freudenberg, the commander of the 11th Landwehr Division. He was responsible for the gas attack on Osowiec Fortress. Kotlinsky lunged at him and tackled him to the ground. He put his bayonet to his throat and looked into his eyes. "Remember me," he said with his last breath. He plunged his bayonet into Freudenberg's neck and killed him instantly. He collapsed on top of him and died with a smile on his face. He had avenged his men. He had avenged Osowiec Fortress.